Breathe deeply now. Feel the gentle weight of your body settling deeper into its support. The soft murmur of the world outside your sanctuary slowly fading into a distant, almost imperceptible hum. Allow your mind to truly drift, to unfurl itself like an ancient, fragile scroll revealing script long forgotten, yet profoundly impactful. We are journeying to a place of quiet contemplation, a realm where the familiar, sturdy threads of destiny have been delicately rewoven, crafting an entirely different tapestry of existence. Imagine for a moment a world suspended in a delicate, almost breathtaking balance, where one pivotal choice, one singular moment of deviation, reshaped everything that followed. A choice not made, a path not taken, resounding through the very fabric of time. Our story, then, truly begins on Themyscira, the paradise island, perpetually veiled from the harsh, chaotic gaze of man's world. Here, the golden sands remain utterly pristine, untouched, kissed only by the clear, azure waves that break with a rhythmic, soothing sigh. The ancient Amazonian temples, monuments to strength and wisdom, stand eternal and unblemished, their polished marble and time-honored stone reflecting the ever-present, benevolent golden sun. Their grandeur is undisturbed by the clamor of distant conflicts, the fleeting anxieties of a forgotten world. This is a realm of profound peace, of unwavering sisterhood, of rigorous, disciplined training, and deep, ancestral wisdom, existing exactly as it was divinely meant to be, isolated and whole. But what if this sacred isolation, this unbroken circle of Amazonian life, was never, for even a moment, breached? What if Diana, Princess of Themyscira, never encountered the crashing plane that was never destined to arrive, never witnessed the desperate plea of a stranded pilot who was never shipwrecked, never felt the urgent, undeniable call to protect a world beyond her own hallowed shores? This is the whisper of our tale. Consider, then, a Diana, forever the revered Amazonian princess, her formidable spirit honed by millennia of Amazonian tradition, her days filled with the serene, purposeful rhythm of training, scholarly counsel, and profound contemplation. Her gaze, sharp and knowing, is focused entirely inward on the prosperity, protection, and continuous spiritual evolution of her secluded home. The bracelets of submission, forged in the fires of ancient myth, never tested in the crucible of mankind's folly or the brutal clash of external war, gleam under the Themysciran light, their polished surfaces reflecting the serene blue sky. Their immense power remains solely a symbol of Amazonian strength, a revered artifact of their heritage, potent only within their sacred borders, their true potential unchallenged. She walks among her sisters, a beacon of unwavering grace and indomitable power. Her destiny seemingly fulfilled within the tranquil, predictable confines of the island. Yet, beneath the surface of this idyllic peace, an unseen current subtly flows. The sheer absence of her intervention, the momentous choice not to engage, ripples outwards across the vast, unseen ocean. It creates an echo chamber of consequence, a quiet, growing reverberation that grows louder, imperceptibly at first, with each passing moment on the human shores. This is not a tale of heroic triumph over immediate, explosive peril. No sudden, dramatic battle. Instead, it is a slow, methodical, deeply atmospheric unfolding narrative of destiny, irrevocably rerouted, of shadows quietly gathering in the forgotten, quiet corners of an unprepared world. Unseen by the greatest champion it never knew it possessed, nor desperately needed. Picture the Amazonian shore as dusk begins its slow, ethereal descent, where the gentle, rhythmic surf whispers ancient secrets to the golden sand, never speaking of the distant, growing chaos beyond the protective mists. Diana, perhaps, stands by the water's edge, her form a graceful silhouette against the softening light, her gaze fixed on the far, boundless horizon. Her expression is not one of longing for an unknown world, but rather the quiet, profound introspection of a vigilant guardian, attuned to the subtle energies of her domain. The salty air, pure and untainted, carries no scent of distant, acrid smoke, no faint echo of desperate, unheard cries from lands far away. Her senses, exquisitely finely attuned to the delicate balance of her island's thriving ecosystem, perceive only its ancient magic, its vibrant life, its unchanging harmony. The sun, a swollen orb of amber and fire, dips slowly below the line where sea meets sky, painting the clouds in breathtaking hues of deep violet and fiery orange, as it has for millennia. Yet each sunset now seems to carry a subtle, almost imperceptible weight, a hushed gravity born of absence. It is the palpable weight of what isn't happening in the wider world, the subtle, insidious erosion of hope, the gradual, unguided shift in the world's moral compass occurs not with a cataclysmic bang, but with a prolonged, sorrowful sighing silence, a silence that builds, layer upon slow, creeping layer, in the forgotten corners of humanity, leaving an impression far more profound and devastating than any single battle lost. This quiet, inexorable unfolding is the true, expansive canvas of our story, revealing a world that unknowingly missed its chance at heroism, and a champion who remained blissfully, yet consequentially, unaware of the profound darkness slowly consuming the realms beyond her unbroken circle. The tranquil tides around the Themyscira, usually a constant rhythm, began to carry a subtle, unfamiliar chill. Not a harsh cold, but a faint, metallic tang on the salt air. A whisper from distant shores. Diana, ever attuned to the island's pulse, noticed the seabirds flying in altered patterns, their cries holding a new, faint note of disquiet. She would often stand by the shimmering veil that guarded their realm, a silent sentinel, her senses reaching out, trying to decipher the faint, shifting currents that hinted at a world she had never actively embraced. Within the hidden libraries of Themyscira, scrolls meticulously detailing the history of man's world remained mostly untouched, save for the occasional scholar sister who would update recent, though increasingly sparse, reports from outside observers. These reports, delivered by ancient, almost forgotten methods, spoke not of wars of men, but of a different kind of silence spreading across the continents. Cities once bustling with distant, vibrant lights now seemed to flicker less brightly in the faint, long-range magical scryings, their faint hum growing muted, a slow diminishment rather than an explosive end. The sacred groves, where ancient trees reached for the sky, began to bear fruit with an unusual bitterness, and the crystalline rivers sometimes seemed to flow with a heavier, less vital current. These were not cataclysms, merely delicate shifts in the island's natural balance, subtle enough to be dismissed by many, yet keenly felt by the older, more experienced Amazons. They would gather in hushed groups near the council fires, their discussions not of impending invasion, but of a creeping dissonance, a faint discord in the harmonious symphony of their protected world, echoing a world that was slowly, quietly, losing its own song. The subtle changes Diana perceived deepened, drawing her instinctively toward the ancient truth pools nestled deep within the island's forgotten grottos. This sacred place, rarely visited, hummed with a primal energy, the air perpetually cool, and thick with the earthy scent of millennia-old stone and damp moss. She approached the largest pool, its obsidian-like surface reflecting the faint, natural light like a dark mirror. With quiet reverence, Diana dipped her fingertips into the shimmering water, sending calm ripples outwards. This was a practice reserved for the most attuned, a way to touch the distant without overtly breaking the sacred vow of non-interference. Her heightened Amazonian senses stretched beyond the protective veil of Themyscira, not seeking battle, but understanding the growing quiet, the insidious creep of emptiness that now seemed to press against the island's mystical defenses like a slow, unseen tide. Through the scrying waters, the faint, shimmering images of man's world began to coalesce, though never with perfect clarity, always observed through a veil of mist. Yet the impressions were stark, chilling her to the core despite the distance. The once vibrant, chaotic energy that traditionally pulsed from vast human cities was now largely absent. What remained was a pallid, muted glow, like embers slowly dying in a forgotten hearth, their warmth and light almost entirely extinguished. There was no visible destruction that she could discern, no screaming fires or the clamor of war that the ancient scrolls foretold. Instead, an overwhelming sense of stillness pervaded the distant continents, a profound lack of vital force. The faint whispers Diana had felt on the wind now manifested as a deep, chilling void in the scrying waters. A quiet consumption of light and sound that spoke not of a world ending in dramatic fire, but fading imperceptibly into an icy, pervasive silence. Withdrawing her fingertips from the scrying water, Diana felt the chill deep within her bones, a cold that mirrored the profound emptiness she had witnessed. The air in the forgotten grotto, once merely cool, now seemed to press in, heavy with the weight of ancient warnings. Her gaze drifted to the grotto walls, etched with millennia of Amazonian history and prophecy. Among the familiar depictions of heroic deeds and fierce battles, one intricate carving caught her eye, a cosmic pattern with a central star, its light unmistakably fading, a symbol often interpreted as a distant, dying world. A shiver, not of cold, but of a deep, unsettling premonition, traced its way down her spine. Leaving the grotto's quiet depths, Diana ascended a winding, overgrown path, the air growing subtly warmer as she approached the island's outer fringes. The normally vibrant, shimmering mist that enveloped the Themyscira, an impenetrable veil protecting it from man's world, now seemed thinned, not visibly broken, but a faint, almost imperceptible gray light from beyond the barrier flickered through, like distant, dying embers attempting to pierce a heavy fog. It was a subtle shift, a barely there translucence that spoke of a draining energy, a connection between the fading outside world and the island's own defenses that had never been present before. A quiet urgency now propelled Diana, though her steps remained deliberate and measured. She moved through ancient, echoing courtyards, past silent training grounds, towards a serene open-air library carved into a cliff face, its alcoves holding scrolls and tomes spanning centuries. The air here was cool, smelling of aged parchment and dry stone. Her gaze fell upon a specific, heavily bound leather volume, its cover etched with symbols of celestial bodies and forgotten ages. This was where the Amazons chronicled the most obscure prophecies, the subtle shifts in the cosmic weave that might herald a deeper, more insidious change than mere human conflict. The thinned mist, once a flawless barrier of vibrant energy, now offered a subtly altered view. Through its ethereal translucence, Diana could discern more than just a vague gray light, the faint, skeletal outlines of what must have once been towering structures from man's world now presented themselves, ghostly against an increasingly muted sky. It was a panorama of silence and decay, devoid of movement or any sign of life, further confirming the grim images from the scrying waters. A cool, almost sterile breeze, alien to Themyscira's usual warm, fragrant air, drifted past her, carrying with it no scent of life, only a faint, metallic tang that spoke of ruin and abandonment. The weight of this desolate vision settled upon her, heavier than any physical burden. Turning from the unnerving sight, Diana walked deeper along the coastal path, the normally lush foliage seeming to hold a muted hue. The ancient, weathered statues of Amazonian warriors that lined the sacred way, guardians of the island's perimeter, stood as silent sentinels, their chiseled forms, usually vibrant with lifelike detail, now appeared subtly softened by time, and a quiet, almost imperceptible erosion, as if even the very stone of Themyscira was beginning to feel the encroaching silence. The air itself, though still warm, no longer carried the vibrant hum of the island's protective energies, replaced instead by a profound quiet that seemed to absorb all other sounds. Her path led her inland, past the tranquil pools where younger Amazons learned the art of meditation, now unusually still. The echoes of distant training, the clang of practice weapons, and the rhythmic chants that usually permeated the air were notably absent. The vibrant mosaics that adorned the pathways and public spaces, typically gleaming with an inner light, now seemed to possess a duller sheen, absorbing rather than reflecting the sun's gentle rays. Diana felt an urgent need to reach the council, to share her chilling observations before the quiet consumption of light and sound, witnessed in the scrying waters, and now subtly felt on the Themyscira itself, fully enveloped them all. The path gradually widened, leading Diana towards the ancient temple of the Amazons, its grand facade usually a beacon of the island's enduring strength. Tonight, even its hallowed stones seemed to absorb the encroaching silence, the intricate carvings upon its pillars appearing muted, their heroic tales almost whispered by the cool, unfamiliar breeze. A faint, almost imperceptible film of dust, alien to the Themyscira's meticulously tended spaces, coated the lowest steps, a subtle testament to a shifting reality. Stepping through the massive, unadorned archway, Diana found the temple's antechamber unusually still. The scent of jasmine and aged cedar, usually a comforting embrace, was faint, almost overshadowed by the same sterile tang that had ridden the breeze outside. Ancient tapestries, depicting triumphant Amazonian battles and peaceful prosperity, hung heavy, their vibrant threads appearing subtly dimmed, as if the light within them had retreated. She walked across the polished marble floor, her soft sandals making no sound in the profound quiet. Ahead, the great bronze doors of the council chamber stood slightly ajar, a sliver of deeper shadow visible within. No clamor of voices or rustle of robes emanated from beyond, only the deep, resonant silence that now permeated the island. As she neared, Diana could discern the faint, melancholic glow of the scrying pool within the chamber's heart, its surface mirroring a muted, almost mournful light. The air here felt thicker, heavy with unspoken concerns, a prelude to the difficult truths that awaited. The air inside the temple, usually charged with the energy of Amazonian life, felt thin, as if the very breath of the island was held. Diana passed rows of ancient battle standards, their fabric, once vibrant with the colors of forgotten victories, now hung heavy and faded, almost indistinguishable from the shadows clinging to the high ceilings. The scent of ozone, a familiar part of the warrior's temple, was absent, replaced by the persistent, subtle tang of sterility. Her steps led her toward the grand training courtyards, usually alive with the rhythmic clang of practice weapons and the shouts of Amazonian cadets. Tonight, only a hollow echo greeted her approach. The polished stone floor, typically scuffed by countless years of rigorous practice, showed a faint, unfamiliar sheen, as if untouched for an age. Even the ever-present, faint glow of the Amazonian magic, usually a protective aura, seemed dimmed, barely illuminating the intricate carvings of their patron deities on the surrounding pillars. She reached the central training ring, a vast circular expanse bordered by ornate weapon racks. Usually, these racks would be bristling with a multitude of spears, swords, and bows, each bearing the marks of frequent use. Tonight, however, many hooks stood empty, and the remaining armaments seemed almost to sleep, gathering that same faint dust. Diana's gaze fell upon a pristine set of Amazonian armor, gleaming softly under the subdued light from a high, unseen aperture. Her own reflection shimmered faintly in its polished breastplate, a warrior in a silent hall, a champion without a present battle. She saw the unwavering resolve in her own eyes, but also a hint of contemplation, a question lingering just beneath the surface. Taking a deep, controlled breath, Diana moved to the center of the ring. Her movements, fluid and powerful, flowed into a precise kata, a series of ancient Amazonian combat forms. Each strike, each parry, each pivot was executed with perfect grace and strength, her body a testament to countless centuries of disciplined training. The faint whoosh of air as her blade cut through the emptiness was the only sound, a soft whisper in the vast, silent chamber, though there was no enemy before her, no imminent threat on the Themyscira. The memory of her mother's words, of prophecies spoken long ago, resonated within her. The man's world beyond their shores, a place they were forbidden to interfere with, was not truly silent. Diana turned slowly from her reflection, the faint gleam of her armor still holding her gaze for a moment. A barely perceptible shift in the air, a whisper that was not wind, pulled her attention from the silent hall. It was a sensation she knew instinctively, a subtle fraying at the edges of the island's ancient wards, like a thread pulled from an intricately woven tapestry. The protective magic, usually an impermeable, soothing hum, now held a discordant, almost desperate tremble. She felt it resonate deep within her, a faint, disquieting shiver that crept along her Amazonian senses, a feeling she had never encountered within Themyscira's hallowed bounds. It was not a breach, not yet, but a promise of one, a hairline fracture in the divine shield that had always cradled her home. Following the strange, ethereal tremor, Diana moved with a quiet urgency that was alien to the island's usual tranquility. Her path led her away from the temple's core, towards the coastal cliffs, where the protective mist of Themyscira traditionally clung most thickly. The air grew cooler, carrying a faint, unfamiliar tang that hinted not of sea salt, but of something far more distant and cold. The intricate carvings on the cliffside, symbols of Hecate's ancient blessings and Ares's tempered might, seemed to ripple momentarily, as if the very stone was questioning its eternal purpose. She noticed the mist, usually a soft, pearlescent veil, now had patches of an almost imperceptible grayness, a slight dullness in its luminescence, like a breath held too long. This was not the vibrant, life-affirming magic she knew. This was a magic under duress, straining against an unseen pressure. Reaching a promontory overlooking the churning, obsidian sea, Diana paused. The usual rhythmic crash of waves against the cliffs seemed muted, swallowed by a vast, oppressive quiet. Her keen Amazonian sight pierced the swirling mist, searching for the source of the disquiet. And then she saw it. Not a roar, not an explosion, but a distant, almost imperceptible shimmer, like heat haze above a dying fire. On the far horizon, beyond the protective veil of Themyscira, it pulsed faintly, a cold, unnatural violet against the deep, endless black of the ocean and sky, a color that did not belong to the natural world. At the very edge of the mist, where the protective energy thinned to its most vulnerable point, Diana saw the true extent of the anomaly. The pearlescent veil was not just dull in patches. Here, it shimmered with pockets of deep, unnatural gray, almost like smoke trapped within crystal. It moved with a sluggish, viscous quality, entirely unlike the usual ethereal dance of the island's magic. The air, already carrying an unfamiliar tang, intensified its chill at this precise point, causing a faint tremor in the delicate moss that clung to the ancient cliff face. A subtle pressure seemed to emanate from beyond the veil, a weight against the very fabric of Themyscira's hidden existence, making the boundary itself feel as though it was struggling to draw breath, gasping against an invisible, suffocating force. This was a fraying at the deepest level, a divine thread unraveling from within the heart of this grayed, struggling mist. A whisper, barely discernible above the rhythmic sigh of the distant ocean, seemed to softly emanate. It was not a voice, nor a sound from nature's vibrant symphony, but a faint, metallic hum, distant and mournful, like the ghost of forgotten machinery echoing across vast, empty spaces. This alien vibration resonated deeply within Diana, a stark counterpoint to the island's harmonious pulse, a note of discord in a world of perfect pitch. It carried with it a faint scent, too not of salt, or damp earth, or sweet blossoms, but something cold and sterile, like stone that had never known sunlight, or rain that had fallen from a sky that had long forgotten its true color. It was the subtle, disquieting aroma of a world slowly losing its very vitality, its essence gently seeping through the divine protections, a silent testament to man's world's plight. As the metallic hum continued its sorrowful thrum, weaving itself into the very fabric of the chilled air, Diana's gaze settled on an intricate carving of Hecate's three-faced symbol, etched into the very rock where the gray mist curled most thickly. The ancient lines, usually glowing with a soft, internal luminescence, now flickered, barely perceptible, like a candle flame struggling against an unseen, persistent draft. The subtle light receded for a moment, then returned, weaker than before, a momentary lapse in millennia of constant, unwavering vigilance. It was a visual tremor, a silent cry from the very foundations of the island's magic, confirming that whatever potent force pressed against their world was now strong enough to touch the divine, leaving its faint mark on the sacred symbols themselves, a slow erosion of Themyscira's eternal calm. The metallic hum seemed to intensify, a low, persistent thrum against the ancient silence of Themyscira. Diana, her gaze still fixed on the fraying mist, slowly extended a hand, her fingers outstretched towards the grayed shimmer. She moved with the quiet grace of a forest creature, every muscle in soft control, her breath a barely audible whisper against the faint sigh of the ocean. Her fingertips, calloused from years of training, yet sensitive to every nuance of the world around her, hovered just inches from the unstable boundary, a subtle resistance, like encountering a warm, thick syrup, met her approach, yet no physical barrier could be seen. It was a barrier of energy, of dying magic, and the chill emanating from it deepened as her hand drew near. The air around her arm became heavy, a pressure that was not uncomfortable, but deeply unsettling. A sensation of ancient power struggling against an encroaching emptiness. As her fingers finally brushed against the pearlescent surface, a jolt, not of pain, but of profound cold, pulsed through her. It was not the cold of ice, but the sterile chill of absence, of life itself being drawn away. The gray pockets within the mist swirled with a slow, hypnotic motion, and for a fleeting moment, Diana felt as though she glimpsed a vast, empty space beyond, a realm devoid of color and vibrancy. The mournful hum vibrated through her bones, a deep chord of sorrow and desolation. It was not a sound of distress, but of resignation, of a world that had ceased to struggle against its fate. This close, the sterile scent became more distinct, a metallic tang mixed with a faint chemical burn, utterly foreign to the verdant sense of her home. This was not a natural decay, but something imposed, something done to the world. Diana withdrew her hand slowly, the unnatural cold lingering on her skin like a phantom touch. Her brow furrowed, a rare expression of troubled thought on her serene face. The harmony of Themyscira, which had always been an extension of her very being, now felt subtly discordant, marred by the lingering vibration of that alien hum. She had seen the weakness, felt the chill, and understood that the world beyond the veil was not merely suffering, but was actively being consumed. The protections of Themyscira, ancient and divine though they were not impregnable. They were merely delaying the inevitable, slowing the seeping dread. A profound quiet settled over her, not of peace, but of dawning realization, a solemn weight descending upon her heart. Her duty, once clear and confined to her island home, now felt stretched, pulled by an invisible thread towards the dying world beyond. The profound cold intensified as Diana's hand eased deeper into the spectral mist. A frigid current, unlike any natural chill, threatening to numb her very essence. Within the swirling gray pockets, forms began to coalesce, and then dissolve indistinct shapes that shimmered with a dying, phosphorescent light. For a breathless, harrowing instant, she perceived a skeletal outline of towering structures, not of wood or stone, but of a metallic, jagged grandeur, utterly devoid of warmth or life. It was a phantom cityscape, flickering into existence only to be swallowed by the encroaching emptiness, a silent testament to to a world starved of vibrancy. The metallic hum throbbed against her palm, a hollow rhythm, mirroring the vast desolation she now glimpsed. As quickly as the phantom city appeared, it dissolved back into the churning gray, leaving behind only the lingering, sterile chill. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the ancient stone path beneath Diana's sandals, a deep, resonant pulse. Themyscira itself seemed to stir, a slow, deep breath drawn in response to the encroaching desolation, a protective instinct awakening from millennia of slumber. Near the boundary, carved into a weathered rock face, an ancient Amazonian symbol depicting the protective visage of a guardian lioness with eyes of agate, began to pulse with a soft, ethereal golden light, barely visible against the encroaching shadows of the mist. It was a silent, defiant flicker, a whisper of the island's own dormant magic, awakening to challenge the pervasive chill, a testament to an unseen battle. The air, though still heavy with the sterile scent of absence, seemed to gather a faint, hopeful warmth around the glowing symbol, a promise of resilience. Diana slowly withdrew her hand from the mist, the profound cold lingering on her skin like a memory, her gaze fixed on the defiant glow, a new resolve quietly forming within her. The world's plight, once a distant echo, was now a palpable weight. Diana slowly withdrew her hand from the mist, the profound cold lingering on her skin like a memory, her gaze fixed on the defiant glow, a new resolve quietly forming within her. The world's plight, once a distant echo, was now a palpable weight. The phantom city, a jagged scar against the encroaching emptiness, had dissolved, yet its stark, metallic grandeur lingered in her mind's eye, a silent testament to a vibrancy starved. The chill that had seeped into her very bones began to recede, replaced by the soft, ethereal warmth emanating from the ancient guardian symbol, a golden pulse against the gathering shadows. The deep, resonant tremor that had run through the Themyscira itself now settled into a low, protective hum, a lullaby woven from millennia of slumber. Diana stood at the boundary, caught between the fading horror of a vision and the enduring serenity of her home. The choice, once a philosophical debate among the elders, was now a lived, if brief, experience within her own consciousness. Man's world, devoid of her champion, was a desolate whisper. The Themyscira, protected by her presence, remained a vibrant heart. The weight of the untold story of countless lives unchampioned settled upon her shoulders, not as a burden of guilt, but as a solemn understanding of the path irrevocably chosen. The air, though still holding the sterile scent of absence at the very edge of the mist, softened into the familiar, fragrant embrace of the Themyscira, carrying the scent of sea salt and night blooming jasmine. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the symbol bathe her face, allowing the deep, ancient magic of the island to soothe the lingering unease. This was her world. This was her destiny, and in that quiet acceptance, a profound, if melancholic, peace began to bloom. The golden light from the lioness symbol pulsed once more, a gentle, reassuring beat in the deepening twilight. The quiet hum of Themyscira deepened, a symphony of ancient earth and vibrant life, slowly reasserting its dominance over the sterile echoes of the world beyond. Diana turned from the boundary, her footsteps soft upon the worn stone path, moving away from the encroaching shadows and back into the gentle embrace of the island's heart. The phantom city, though banished from sight, remained a stark image etched upon her soul, a quiet sorrow for a future that might have been, a silent lament for lives she would never touch. Yet the air grew warmer with each step, infused with the subtle magic that flowed beneath the roots of ancient trees and within the very stones of Amazonian architecture. She passed through a moonlit grove of olive trees, their silver leaves rustling like hushed whispers, each sound a gentle reaffirmation of the island's enduring peace. The scent of night-blooming jasmine now mixed with the earthy perfume of moss and damp soil, a rich, grounding aroma that cleared the lingering scent of absence from her senses. Her gaze, once fixed on the desolate horizon, now softened, tracing the familiar curves of sculpted archways and the comforting glow of oil lamps that lined the pathways. This was her sanctuary, a timeless haven built on strength and sisterhood, a world apart. The knowledge she carried was a heavy truth, but it was offset by the profound peace of her chosen path. She was not a savior for the world beyond, but a guardian for this one, a champion for the legacy of Themyscira. The responsibility felt different now, no less profound, but rooted in an intimate, ancient understanding rather than a desperate, universal plea. A quiet acceptance settled over her, like the gentle dew falling on the leaves, softening the edges of sorrow, allowing the quiet strength of her purpose to shine through. The island breathed around her, a living entity, echoing her own steady heart. She reached a high terrace overlooking the vast, tranquil expanse of the ocean, its rhythmic waves a soothing lullaby against the shore below. The air here was clean and cool, carrying only the pristine scent of the sea, untainted by any hint of the world beyond. Above, the countless stars glittered, distant and serene, mirroring the quiet majesty of Themyscira itself. Diana stood at the edge, not looking out at what was lost, but inward at what remained. The weight of her past vision, though still present, had transformed from an acute ache into a deep, underlying current of understanding. She carried the knowledge of humanity's unseen struggle, not as a regret, but as a truth accepted, a story of an alternate fate that would forever remain a silent echo in her heart. Her destiny was here, rooted in the ancient earth, bound by the sacred laws of her sisters. The golden glow from the guardian symbol, though now far behind her, felt like a distant, comforting heartbeat, a testament to Themyscira's enduring power and the quiet strength of its chosen champion. This was a different future, not one of glorious battles fought across ravaged landscapes, but one of steadfast protection within a sacred haven. The choice had been made, the path walked, and in this quiet moment, under the watchful eyes of the stars, Diana found her ultimate peace. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, a dark, vast blanket under the soft amber glow of a rising dawn, or perhaps the lingering twilight of a world forever distant. The whispers of the waves offered no judgment, only an eternal, calming rhythm, inviting surrender to the deep, dreamless sleep of a world finally at peace within itself and within its champion. She followed a winding path edged with ancient, glowing moss, deeper into the island's sacred heart. The air here was thicker, laced with the aroma of unknown blossoms and the faint, humming resonance of an unseen power. Before her stood the entrance to the Oracle's Grove, its archway carved from living stone, crowned with bioluminescent flora that pulsed with a gentle inner light. Diana paused, her hand brushing the cool, smooth stone, feeling the centuries of Amazonian devotion emanating from its surface, a profound tether to her destiny. Within the tranquil depths of the grove, a faint shimmer caught her eye. It was not the natural light of the island, but a subtle distortion in the very air, like heat haze seen through water, manifesting briefly before an ancient, unpolished scrying mirror hidden amongst the roots. The surface of the mirror remained dark, yet the air around it trembled. A distant, almost imperceptible lament carried on the currents of the world beyond, barely reaching the island's protective embrace. Diana's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly, her senses, honed by years of training and Themyscira's magic, detecting the faint tremor of discordant energy. It was not a direct vision, nor a clear sound, but a profound disharmony, a faint, unsettling echo of suffering that seeped through the veil. She stood silent, a sentinel in the sacred grove, the island's gentle magic a comforting cloak around her. Yet, unable to fully block out the phantom ache from a world she had chosen to forsake, Diana stepped through the archway, the living stone parting subtly as she passed. Inside the Oracle's Grove, the air hummed with a different quality, a denser, more profound stillness. Ancient trees, their roots gnarled and silvered with phosphorescent fungi, formed a natural cathedral, their high canopy filtering the ambient light into soft, diffused glows. Petals like fallen stars lay scattered on the mossy ground. Her steps were light, almost soundless, as she approached the scrying mirror. It rested nestled amidst the thickest roots of the central, largest tree, its dark surface an unblemished void. Yet the subtle distortion in the air around it seemed to intensify, shimmering with an almost imperceptible inner light that wasn't reflected but emanated. Reaching the ancient artifact, Diana knelt before it, her gaze fixed on the dark, unreflective surface. The tremulous air now seemed to weave faint, fleeting impressions within the distortion, like smoke tendrils forming and dissipating. She saw no clear images, but felt a cold dread, a profound sense of loss that resonated not from the island, but from beyond its magical veil. It was an echo of forgotten cries, a phantom touch of suffering, a world yearning for strength it would never receive from her. The air grew heavier, pressing down with the weight of unseen burdens, a sorrow that felt deeply human, untempered by divine grace or heroic intervention. As she focused, the dark surface seemed to deepen, no longer merely absorbing light, but hinting at an infinite abyss. The vague impressions coalesced, not into literal scenes, but into the pervasive feeling of a world without light, a landscape choked with despair. She perceived towering structures, once symbols of ambition, now hollowed out, dark and silent against a perpetually gray sky. It was a vision of humanity not destroyed by a single cataclysm, but slowly, inexorably diminished by an absence of hope, by the lack of a beacon. No vibrant champions soared through these somber skies. No heroes stood against the encroaching shadow. Just a quiet, pervasive decay. A world left to its own devices, spiraling into a muted, desolate fate. Diana remained kneeling, the chill of the unreflective surface seeming to seep into her hands, even through the warm moss. The sorrowful echo persisted, a phantom ache in her chest, distinct from any pain she had ever known on the Themyscira. It was a desolation untempered by the island's vibrant life, a profound quiet where joy seemed to have withered. She closed her eyes, not in despair, but in an effort to absorb the raw data of suffering without being overwhelmed. The subtle distortion in the air around the mirror now felt less like a distant hum and more like a whispered chorus of unseen tears, each one a tiny drop of a vast, unquantifiable ocean of human grief. This was not merely the plight of a few. It was a pervasive shadow stretching across an entire world. Slowly, with a grace born of centuries of discipline, Diana rose. Her gaze swept over the oracle's grove, the silvered roots and glowing fungi, a sanctuary untouched by the despair that now felt so close. The weight of her duty, of the ancient laws that had protected Themyscira for millennia, settled heavily upon her shoulders. The oath of non-intervention, a sacred pact forged in the blood of their ancestors, echoed in her mind. It was a promise to the gods, a shield against the chaotic impulses of man's world, designed to preserve their way of life. Yet, the echoes of suffering now seemed to challenge the very foundation of that peace, painting a stark contrast between their serene existence and the silent cries of a world teetering on the brink. With a last, lingering glance at the dark mirror, Diana turned. Her departure was as silent as her arrival, the living stone archway subtly reshaping itself behind her. But the air outside the grove felt different now, no longer merely vibrant, but holding a faint, residual chill, as if the sorrow she had witnessed had clung to her, an invisible cloak. The familiar sounds of Themyscira, the distant crash of waves, the calls of exotic birds, the faint murmur of her sisters' voices, seemed to recede, muffled by the persistent echo in her heart. She walked along a moss-lined path, the path she had walked countless times, but now each step felt heavier, burdened by the unspoken questions that bloomed in the wake of the mirror's dark revelations. The clarity of her purpose, once absolute, now held a subtle, unsettling ripple. The whispers intensified, no longer just a chorus, but individual, faint pleas that seemed to brush against the edges of Diana's perception. Each phantom touch resonated with a deep, ancestral memory of protection, yet also with a nascent, unfulfilled yearning to extend aid. The silvered leaves of the oracle's grove shimmered with an accustomed, gentle light, a stark counterpoint to the growing internal gloom she felt. She turned back to the polished surface of the scrying mirror, its obsidian depths now reflecting not merely distortion, but hints of form, fleeting shadows moving with a sorrowful slowness. The air, once merely cool, now carried an almost imperceptible chill, a breath from a world losing its warmth. The ancient laws, once a comfort, felt like iron bands around her heart, holding back an impulse that threatened to shatter centuries of tradition. The blurred forms within the mirror began to solidify, no longer abstract shadows, but faint, desolate landscapes. Empty, crumbling structures, once towering cities, now stood as monuments to abandonment, their edges softened by time and neglect, not by peace. No vibrant movement, no bustling crowds, only stillness. The pervasive silence emanating from these spectral visions was more profound than any noise could be, speaking of a world where hope had not just dimmed, but perhaps truly withered. The air around the mirror vibrated with a low frequency, a silent scream resonating across the dimensional divide, a sound only Diana seemed attuned to. It was the sound of millions of untold stories ending, of futures unwritten, of a world quietly ceasing to thrive. A subtle shift occurred within Diana. The initial sorrow, the empathy for a distant world, began to solidify into a quiet, burning resolve. The oath, once a heavy shield, now felt like a veil, obscuring a path she felt compelled to explore. She reached out, her fingers hovering inches from the mirror's surface, as if to touch the spectral image of decay, to feel the dust of a dying world. Her reflection, superimposed over the desolate landscape, was that of a warrior, but one whose battle had yet to begin, whose purpose was still nascent. The silvered roots around her pulsed with a faint, almost imperceptible rhythm, as if sensing the momentous turning of her internal tide. The obsidian depths of the scrying mirror now offered more than fleeting glimpses. They presented a sustained, mournful tableau. Diana's gaze, usually so bright with the wisdom of the Amazons, now carried a profound, quiet sorrow as she watched the slow, inevitable decline. The structures, once mere shadows, began to resolve into stark, skeletal forms. The husks of what were once soaring towers, now reduced to jagged teeth against a perpetually twilight sky. No smoke rose from any chimney. No glint of metal spoke of industry. No distant hum of machinery broke the suffocating silence. It was a world that had not merely paused, but had, in essence, forgotten how to breathe. The faint pleas she had heard earlier seemed to coalesce into a single, drawn-out sigh, a collective expiration of hope that echoed not with violence, but with an immense, weary surrender. The low frequency emanating from the mirror intensified, not in volume, but in its pervasive reach. It was no longer just a sound Diana perceived, but a vibration that hummed faintly beneath her bare feet, traveling through the very roots of the ancient trees in the grove. The vibrant, life-affirming hum that usually filled the Themyscira, a gentle symphony of nature and magic, seemed to recede, as if a profound emptiness from beyond the veil was pressing inward, muting the island's inherent vitality. The air, once merely cool, now felt thin, almost bereft of the nourishing essence Diana was accustomed to. A single, withered petal drifted from a blossoming orchid nearby, an anomaly in the perpetually lush and perfect Amazonian flora, falling silently to the polished stone floor. It was a minuscule detail, yet it spoke volumes. A subtle wound in Themyscira's untouched perfection, a testament to the encroaching tendrils of the outside world's despair. reaching even through the protective magic of the island. Diana's heightened senses, trained for centuries in the harmonious rhythms of Themyscira, now struggled to reconcile the beauty around her with the crushing desolation she perceived through the mirror. She closed her eyes for a moment, not to block the visions, but to amplify her other senses, trying to feel the texture of that profound silence, to taste the acrid despair. She reached out a hand, not quite touching the mirror, but hovering inches above its cold, reflective surface, seeking to bridge the unbridgeable chasm with sheer force of will and empathy. The ancient laws, etched into the very fabric of Amazonian life, now felt less like protective wisdom and more like an invisible chain, binding her spirit to an inaction that was becoming increasingly unbearable. Every breath she took, filled with the sweet, clean air of Themyscira, felt like a betrayal of the world beyond, a world that was slowly, silently suffocating. The need to understand the why of this quiet apocalypse, to grasp the true nature of the darkness that consumed humanity without a single hero to light the way, burned with a new, fierce intensity within her heart, even as she remained physically bound to her island home. With a focused intensity, Diana leaned closer to the shimmering surface, the reflective haze parting just enough to reveal a fragment of humanity's suffering with chilling clarity. A colossal, once majestic bridge, its steel girders skeletal against the perpetual twilight, now sagged precariously, its central span fractured and choked with an unidentifiable, dark vegetation. No vehicles crossed it, no lights pierced the gloom. It was a monument to cessation, a silent testament to a world that had abandoned its pathways. The low, mournful hum emanating from the mirror deepened, transforming into a resonant thrum beneath Diana's bare feet, a sympathetic vibration that echoed the world's quiet death rattle, slowly overpowering the island's usually vibrant, natural hum. A subtle tremor, barely perceptible, but undeniably present, passed through the polished obsidian tiles beneath her feet, a direct response to the deepening resonance. Driven by a primal empathy, Diana extended a hand, her fingers hovering for a moment, then resting gently upon the mirror's cool, smooth surface. The faint pleas she had heard earlier, now amplified by the intensifying vibration, seemed to coalesce into a whisper of collective despair against her palm. The mirror's surface rippled almost imperceptibly beneath her touch, not like disturbed water, but like a vast, fragile tapestry swaying in an unseen breeze, stretching the reflected image of the dying world thin for a fleeting instant. As the faint ripple subsided, Diana slowly withdrew her hand, her gaze drifting from the mirror to the familiar, vibrant landscape of Themyscira. Yet, even here, a subtle shift was undeniable. The gentle, silvery mist that often draped the distant Amazonian temples, once imbued with a luminous, ethereal quality, now held a faint, almost imperceptible gray tinge, like a delicate veil of sorrow. The golden glow, usually radiating from the ancient stones, seemed fractionally muted, its usual warmth cooled by an unseen breath. It was as if the very air of the island was absorbing a fraction of the man's world's decay, dimming its inherent brilliance. A slow erosion of light and life that even Themyscira's magic struggled to entirely repel. The mirror's rippling surface, almost like liquid obsidian, now swirled with deeper, more complex patterns of sorrow, each eddy seemingly a tiny whirlpool of human pain. Diana's fingers, still pressed against its cool plane, felt the echo of countless unshed tears and unspoken fears, a profound burden that settled heavily upon her spirit. A single pearlescent tear, a silent testament to the suffering she perceived, tracked a luminous path down her cheek, catching the faint glow from the scrying pool itself before vanishing into the shadowed curve of her jaw. The once vibrant, almost imperceptible shimmer of life that usually emanated from the sacred chamber seemed to dim, receding into itself as the mirror's somber resonance asserted its dominance. The pleas from the dying world, once a mere whisper, now resonated with a distinct, almost tangible weight against her mind, describing a slow, creeping desolation that spread across the lands beyond the Themyscira. She saw, through the mirror's troubled depths, not just fractured bridges, but vast, sprawling urban centers, once bustling with life, now eerily still. Buildings, stripped bare of their purpose, stood like hollowed-out monuments to a forgotten prosperity, their skeletal forms silhouetted against a perpetual, bruised twilight sky. The vegetation that choked the bridge in her earlier vision now crept over everything, not green and vibrant, but a sickly, dark growth, twisting like parasitic veins around the structures of humanity. Even the very air seemed to thicken with a tangible melancholy, heavy and still, devoid of the vibrant buzz of life. With a soft, almost imperceptible sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world, Diana slowly retracted her hand from the mirror's surface. The rippling ceased, the dark visions dissolving back into a murky, reflective haze. Yet the indelible imprint of what she had witnessed remained, etched behind her eyes. Her brow was furrowed with a quiet contemplation, her gaze distant, fixed on the polished obsidian floor, as if tracing the unseen tendrils of despair that had reached out from man's world. The resonant thrum beneath her bare feet began to fade, slowly allowing Themyscira's inherent, vibrant hum to reassert its gentle presence, though now tinged with a faint, unsettling echo of the outside world's mournful silence. The mirror's troubling depths pulsed with a slow, rhythmic sorrow, revealing more than just architectural decay. Diana now perceived the intricate silence of a world where birds no longer sang, and the distant hum of machinery had long since ceased. The very waterways, once bustling with travel and commerce, lay stagnant and choked, reflecting only the perpetual bruised twilight. What life remained seemed to exist in scattered, desperate pockets, flickering like dying embers against a canvas of encroaching blight. The sickly vegetation she observed was not merely an overgrowth, but a silent, consuming force, its tendrils reaching into every crevice, slowly dissolving the remnants of civilization into a formless, verdant oblivion. It was a world not violently destroyed, but gently, agonizingly unwound, its vibrant threads unraveling one by one, until only a husk remained. The chill from the mirror seeped into Diana's bones, a cold that had nothing to do with temperature, and everything to do with the profound absence of hope emanating from its depths. Her fingers, still resting lightly on the surface, traced the invisible currents of despair, a vast, silent ocean of human suffering. She felt the weight of countless unmade choices, of intervention withheld, and of a destiny diverged. A deep sigh, barely audible, escaped her lips, not of surrender, but of a profound, almost ancient sorrow. The pristine air of the Amazonian chamber, usually a balm to her spirit, now seemed too light, too pure, a stark contrast to the heavy, melancholic atmosphere she perceived beyond their shores. Her gaze remained fixed, an unwavering testament to her steadfast nature. Yet within her heart, a quiet storm brewed, a tempest of empathy and the echoes of what might have been. Suddenly, a soft, almost imperceptible shift in the chamber's ambient light. A tall, cloaked figure, her movements as fluid as the shadows she emerged from, paused at the archway, her presence a silent question. Philippus, general of the Amazonian armies, her face etched with ancient wisdom and an unyielding strength, observed Diana from a respectful distance. Her eyes, keen and unwavering, took in the profound stillness of the princess and the troubled depths of the scrying mirror. She understood the weight of the visions, for they were echoes of prophecies whispered among the elders for centuries, of man's world's self-destruction, a fate the Amazons had long prepared for, yet never truly hoped to witness. Her silent arrival was a reminder of the island's steadfast vigilance and the collective burden of their chosen path. The phantom chill, a lingering echo from the mirror's troubling depths, slowly receded from Diana's touch as as she drew her hand back. A subtle tremor, almost imperceptible, traced its path through her strong frame. Settling deep in her heart, she turned away from the shimmering surface. The oppressive vision of a world gently unwound, still clinging to the edges of her awareness. The air in the chamber, usually so serene and pure, now seemed to press upon her with a newfound weight, a silent testament to the stark contrast between their untouched sanctuary and the decay she had just witnessed. Her gaze drifted to the familiar, cool marble of a nearby column, its polished surface reflecting the gentle, ethereal glow of the Amazonian temple. Her fingers, no longer tracing currents of despair, instead found comfort in the smooth, solid stone, a grounding presence amidst the unsettling imagery that still played across her mind's eye. A deeper knowing began to stir within her, a quiet resonance with the ancient prophecies whispered among the Amazon elders. She recalled the meticulously etched symbols on aged scrolls, depicting cycles of corruption and redemption, of the outside world's tendency towards self-destruction if left unchecked. These were not mere stories, but solemn warnings, their meaning now illuminated by the mirror's stark truth. The pristine air of their chamber seemed to carry the scent of old parchment and the weight of forgotten wisdom, mingling with the fresh, clean fragrance of Themyscira's blooming flora. Diana slowly moved through the temple, her footsteps soft upon the mosaic floor, her thoughts tracing the intricate patterns of fate and free will. She paused by a low, carved table where a weathered, leather-bound tome lay open, its pages filled with elegant Amazonian script. The conflict within her deepened, a silent tide rising against the unwavering bedrock of Amazonian law. She knew the decree, absolute and ancient. Themyscira's existence was predicated on non-intervention, a sacred vow to protect their utopia from the chaotic imperfections of man's world. Yet the mirror had laid bare a profound suffering, a slow, agonizing decay that tugged at the very core of her compassionate nature. Her gaze, heavy with unspoken questions, drifted towards an open archway that framed a sliver of the moonlit ocean. The vast, shimmering expanse stretched endlessly, a formidable barrier between her island home and the fading world beyond. The gentle sea breeze, carrying the faint scent of salt and distant possibilities, brushed against her skin, a quiet whisper of the world she had chosen to forsake. Diana's fingers, light as a feather, brushed the aged leather of the tome. Its scent, a mingling of sun-baked vellum and the earth's deep memory, filled the air around her. She gently opened the book, revealing parchment yellowed with time, covered in elegant, spiraling Amazonian script and delicate, hand-drawn constellations that mirrored the celestial patterns above the Themyscira. One particular page, adorned with an intricate, glowing depiction of the world beyond their shores, seemed to pulse with a faint, internal light, drawing her gaze. This was not a map of mere lands, but of energies, of the rise and fall of civilizations, of the subtle currents of discord that could fester and grow into ruin. She traced a finger across a swirling depiction of man's world, a faint sadness stirring within her, recognizing the fragile balance hinted at in the ancient texts, a balance she had just seen shattered in the mirror's cruel reflection. With a soft sigh, Diana carefully closed the tome, its wisdom absorbed, its silent warnings now louder in her mind. She turned from the carved table, her gaze drawn towards the expansive, arched opening of the temple that overlooked the vibrant, untouched landscape of Themyscira. The island shimmered under the gentle sun, a paradise of verdant forests, crystalline waters, and towering, flower-draped cliffs. The air, sweet with the scent of exotic blossoms, carried the distant, soothing murmur of the ocean. This was their home, their sanctuary, a realm seemingly immune to the ravages of time and conflict. Birds with iridescent feathers soared in the azure sky, their calls a melodic counterpoint to the quiet hum of the island's natural magic. A gentle breeze, scented with jasmine, and the distant sea flowed through the temple, rustling the silken banners that depicted Amazonian triumphs and their revered goddesses. Diana watched as a group of younger Amazons, their movements fluid and graceful, practiced their combat forms in a sunlit courtyard adjacent to the main temple hall. The soft clang of their training spears, carefully blunted, echoed rhythmically against the marble, a sound of discipline and strength. Their faces, serene yet focused, spoke of years of dedicated training, a legacy passed down through generations. These were the guardians of Themyscira, poised and ever ready, though their vigilance was primarily directed inward, towards the spiritual purity of their island and the defense against any mystical incursions, not the mundane strife of men. Diana remembered her own rigorous training, the sweat and strain, the fierce pride in mastering each technique. Diana's gaze drifted from the ancient scripts of discord to the tranquil panorama of Themyscira. The air, warm and fragrant with jasmine, carried the gentle, rhythmic sigh of waves breaking on distant shores, a lullaby the island had sung for millennia. Below her, the temple's grand terrace opened onto meticulously tended gardens, where vibrant hibiscus bloomed in shades of crimson and gold, their petals unfurling in the soft morning light. A lone golden eagle, wings outstretched, circled lazily above a sapphire blue lagoon, its silent flight a testament to the island's undisturbed peace. The very stones beneath her bare feet hummed with a subtle, protective energy, a quiet assurance of sanctuary. Yet the echoes of the tome's silent warnings persisted, a faint, disquieting counterpoint to the island's harmonious melody. With a soft exhalation, Diana took a step forward, her movements as fluid and graceful as the sway of the ancient palms lining the temple's perimeter. The cool, polished marble of the terrace gave way to a path paved with smooth river stones, leading down towards a reflecting pool where the sky's vast expanse was perfectly mirrored. She knelt beside its crystalline edge, dipping her fingers into the cool water. The surface rippled gently, distorting the reflection of the heavens. Yet beneath, the clear depths revealed intricate mosaics of Amazonian history, tiny, shimmering tesserae depicting queens, warriors, and scholars. Each tile was a fragment of their unbroken legacy, a testament to the strength and wisdom that had protected their island for so long. She saw Hippolyta, her mother, leading ancient Amazonian legions, her face etched with unwavering resolve. The image reminded Diana of the sacred vows of non-intervention, a promise passed down through generations, binding them to their isolated paradise, come what may. Rising from the pool's edge, Diana continued her slow, deliberate walk along the stone path, which wound through fragrant groves of cypress and olive trees, their ancient branches forming natural archways that filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns on the ground. The only sounds were the soft rustle of leaves and the distant, ever-present murmur of the sea, a symphony of natural tranquility. She passed an elderly Amazon, her silver hair braided with wildflowers, meticulously tending to a cluster of vibrant orchid blooms, her movements radiating a deep, unhurried peace. The woman offered Diana a serene smile, a silent acknowledgement of their shared purpose and the island's enduring harmony. This simple interaction, a vignette of everyday Amazonian life, underscored the profound beauty of their isolation. Yet, a faint tremor of unease still stirred within Diana. The warnings from the ancient texts, though distant, felt increasingly tangible. A subtle discord in the perfect symphony of their world. A reminder that even the deepest peace could be fragile. The mosaic deepened, its tiny stones shifting from images of ancient Amazonian prowess to more somber depictions. Diana traced a finger across a scene of a distant, burning city, its structures collapsing under an unseen weight. Warriors, not Amazons, fought futilely against shadows, their faces etched with despair. This was the world her ancestors had chosen to leave, a world perpetually embroiled in conflicts that threatened to consume all light. The clear water over the mosaic seemed to magnify the desolation, reaffirming the wisdom of Themyscira's long isolation. A faint tremor in the water, imperceptible to any but an Amazon, suggested distant discord, a subtle echo of the world beyond. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of soft orange and lavender, Diana rose from the pool's edge, her movement quiet and unhurried. The cool marble felt different beneath her feet now, imbued with a fresh awareness of the island's profound purpose. Her gaze drifted past the meticulously sculpted gardens, beyond the sun-drenched beaches, towards the distant, shimmering haze that marked the island's protective barrier. She felt the ancient, subtle hum of the island's magic, a constant, comforting embrace. Yet, a faint, almost imperceptible shift in the wind carried a different scent, a faint tang of something foreign, a whisper from beyond the veil. Her bare feet led her along a winding path, paved with ancient, worn stones, towards a higher vantage point within the temple complex. The air grew cooler here, tinged with the scent of night-blooming cereus. She paused beside an ancient, stone-carved celestial sphere, its intricate markings mirroring constellations long forgotten by the outside world. From this elevated position, the entire island lay before her, a tapestry of lush green and sapphire blue, cradled by the endless ocean. A lone Amazonian warrior, silhouetted against the deepening twilight, practiced her forms on a distant training ground, her movements fluid and powerful, a silent testament to their eternal vigilance. The faint, foreign tang on the wind compelled Diana's steps, drawing her away from the pool and into the island's ancient groves. Moonlight filtered through the thick canopy of emerald leaves, dappled the winding path ahead. Each step was measured, her senses attuned to the subtle shift in the island's ever-present harmony. The air, usually pure and sweet, with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and damp earth, now held a faint, almost metallic note, a distant echo of something unknown and unseen. It was a sensation not of danger, but of profound otherness, stirring a quiet curiosity deep within her. The ancient trees seemed to lean in, their silent wisdom a testament to Themyscira's long-standing vigilance. The winding path eventually led her to a secluded cliff overlooking the deep, tranquil ocean. Below, the water shimmered under the moon's glow, meeting the faint, almost invisible curve of Themyscira's protective barrier. This ethereal shield, usually a comforting, constant presence, now seemed to possess a subtle tremor, a barely perceptible ripple on its otherwise serene surface. Diana stood at the edge, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon where the barrier met the night sky. The metallic tang in the air grew infinitesimally stronger here, accompanied by a faint, almost subliminal thrum, like the distant pulse of an unfamiliar heart. A world away, it was not a sound, but a felt vibration, a distant hum of something vast and unquiet beyond their tranquil shores. As Diana focused, a subtle shift occurred within the shimmering veil. For a fleeting instant, the protective magic seemed to thin, not breaking, but becoming momentarily translucent. Through this ethereal window, Diana perceived not clear images, but an abstract kaleidoscope of muted, desaturated colors, grays, dark blues, and a somber, deep red. There were no discernible forms, only a vague, swirling impression of widespread distress, a collective sigh of sorrow carried on an unfelt wind. It was a phantom glimpse, a momentary echo of suffering from man's world, quickly reabsorbed by the barrier's steadfast integrity, leaving only the faint metallic scent and the distant hum behind. The world beyond remained shrouded, yet its quiet plea had momentarily pierced Themyscira's isolation. The distant thrum, a silent whisper from beyond Themyscira's protective shroud, began to coalesce into something more defined in Diana's perception. It was not a physical sound that assaulted her ears, but rather a deep resonance felt in the marrow of her bones, a low, persistent hum of distress. The metallic tang in the air, once faint, now seemed to cling to her, an aroma of unfamiliar, distant turmoil. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the subtle tremor of the barrier wash over her, a tangible connection to the world she had never known, a world the Amazons had sworn to observe, but never engage. The ethereal shield, a symbol of their peace, now felt like a fragile membrane, vibrating with the silent suffering of humanity, a symphony of unspoken sorrows that slowly began to stir her own long dormant protective instincts. As Diana opened her eyes, the barrier seemed to respond to her focused attention. Within its shimmering surface, fleeting patterns began to emerge, not distinct images, but ephemeral impressions of light and shadow, like reflections of a distant, tumultuous sky. The thrum intensified slightly, resonating with a deeper echo of absence, a profound emptiness that seemed to emanate from the world beyond their shores. It was a mournful vibration, a testament to a world slowly losing its light, unseen by the Themyscira, but felt by the barrier. The ancient trees behind her, usually silent witnesses, seemed to sigh with the passing breeze, their leaves rustling a quiet commentary on the world's changing pulse. Diana raised a hand, not quite touching the air, but feeling the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the growing weight of unseen despair. This was not a fleeting disturbance, Diana realized, but a persistent, growing lament from man's world. a quiet, sorrowful pressure that permeated the very fabric of their protective magic. Her Amazonian training had focused on the preservation of Themyscira, on the mastery of combat and wisdom, preparing them for mythological incursions or internal strife. But this quiet, almost intangible suffering from beyond their shores was a new kind of threat, one that resonated with a forgotten prophecy of a world consumed by its own shadows. Absent the light of heroes, she took a slow, deep breath of the jasmine-scented air, her gaze sweeping over the tranquil ocean one last time. With a quiet, unyielding hum of resolve within her, Diana turned from the cliff edge, knowing she must seek the counsel of her mother, Queen Hippolyta, to understand these unprecedented sensations and the growing sorrow of the world beyond. Diana extended her hand further, fingers splayed, not quite breaking the sacred membrane, but tracing the subtle currents within it. The ephemeral impressions coalesced momentarily, forming a fleeting mosaic of a world grown dim, not images of fire or conflict, but rather of muted colors and indistinct forms, a pervasive grayness overlaying what should have been vibrant life. The silence beyond the thrum was what truly struck her, a vast, echoing quiet where there should have been the bustle of human endeavor. It was the quiet of neglect, of things left undone, a slow, systemic fading. A new sensation joined the familiar thrum, a coldness, subtle yet persistent, that seemed to emanate from the world beyond. It was a sterile chill, devoid of the natural bite of Themyscira's mountain air or the refreshing coolness of its sacred springs. This coldness spoke of forgotten hearths and empty spaces, a world slowly succumbing not to ice, but to an absence of warmth itself, a dwindling of the life force that once pulsed so brightly. The vibrant greens of the nearest Amazonian grove, usually radiant under the soft sun, seemed to subtly recede, their edges feeling just a fraction less luminous. This creeping cold, this quiet fading, presented a stark question. Was the barrier, so long a guardian of their peace, now merely a mirror reflecting a dying light? Or was it becoming a filter, slowly letting the world's apathy seep through? Diana's gaze hardened, shifting from the barrier's surface to the serene, untouched landscape of the Themyscira around her. The contrast was profound, almost jarring. For generations, the Amazons had upheld their vow of non-interference, believing humanity held its own destiny. But this wasn't destiny. It felt like a slow, unresisted descent into oblivion, a silent plea that only she seemed to hear. Diana withdrew her hand slowly, the lingering phantom chill a stark contrast to the island's inherent warmth. It wasn't merely a physical cold, she realized, but an emptiness that seeped into the very essence of existence, a slow decay of joy and connection. The air around her, usually so pure and invigorating, now carried a faint, almost imperceptible whisper of despair that brushed against her Amazonian spirit. Her gaze drifted further out, beyond the shimmering veil, imagining the silent, fading landscapes that lay beyond. A profound weariness settled upon her, not of body, but of spirit, as if she had glimpsed a truth too vast and sorrowful for a single heart to bear. She turned away from the barrier, her steps slow, the sacred earth beneath her boots feeling both solid and strangely distant. The ancient olive trees, their silvered leaves usually whispering tales of endurance, seemed to hold their breath, their gnarled branches reaching towards the sky as if in silent supplication, mirroring the unseen plea that resonated from the world beyond. Her gaze fell upon a weathered stone altar, nestled amongst the roots of the oldest tree, where offerings of wild flowers and smooth river stones lay in quiet reverence. Even these simple tokens of Amazonian devotion seemed to possess a muted quality, their colors less vibrant, their edges softened by an unseen touch. The steady rhythm of the distant Aegean Sea, usually a comforting lullaby, now carried an undertone of vast, lonely sighs, a sound that seemed to echo the world's deepening emptiness, pulling at the threads of her Amazonian resolve. Diana's path led her back through the ancient groves where the air, though still vibrant with the scent of cypress and olive, now held a subtle, unsettling hush, as if the very life force of the island was dimming its resonant song in response to the world beyond. The familiar warmth of the sun on her skin felt slightly less penetrating, its golden embrace thinner, and the distant laughter of her sisters seemed fainter, their usual boisterous joy tempered by an unseen, pervasive weight. She passed by the gleaming marble columns of ancient buildings, their surfaces usually reflecting the sun's full glory in dazzling flashes, now appearing to absorb more light than they returned, casting deeper, softer, almost melancholic shadows than before. A profound stillness, not of peace, but of held breath, permeated the Amazonian city, a quiet tension that pressed gently against the edges of her heightened senses, a subtle pressure mirroring the growing emptiness from beyond the veil. The vibrant murals depicting Amazonian triumphs seemed to fade into the stone, their colors losing a fraction of their radiant intensity, reaching the heart of Themyscira's central plaza, usually a vibrant hub of sparring, storytelling, and joyful communal gatherings. Diana observed the few Amazons gathered there. Their movements were deliberate, their conversations subdued, lacking the usual spirited debates or joyous celebrations that defined their immortal lives. A small group of elder warriors, their faces etched with centuries of wisdom and battle, stood near the sacred fountain, its waters usually bubbling with crystalline clarity, now reflecting a sky that felt a shade grayer. Their gazes were directed not at each other, but with a shared, unspoken gravity towards the shimmering, distant barrier that guarded their realm. A flicker of shared concern, a silent acknowledgement of the encroaching chill, passed between them like a cold whisper in the sun, the ever-present sound of the sacred waterfall in the distance, usually a calming, powerful rumble, now seemed to carry a faint, almost imperceptible tremor, mirroring the deepening unease that had settled upon the island like a soft, invisible shroud as the last, lingering rays of the Themysciran sun stretched long, lavender-hued shadows across the tranquil plaza, painting the sky in ever-fading golds and soft, twilight blues. A deep, resonant gong sounded from the direction of the great hall, its tone, usually a clear, celebratory call to unity, or a crisp summons for rigorous training, now held an unusual solemnity, a profound, heavy note that echoed the weighty silence that had fallen upon the city. The sound reverberated through the ancient stones, a vibrational pulse that settled deep within the Amazons' chests, urging them towards a convergence. It was the ancient summons for the High Council, a call rarely invoked unless matters of truly great import, touching the very fate and future of the Amazonian nation, were undeniably at hand. The unspoken question lingered in the still, cooling air, carried on the faint, almost imperceptible whisper of despair from beyond the veil. Had the subtle chill finally become too undeniable, too pressing to ignore? Diana lingered, her gaze tracing the faint shimmer of the barrier, now appearing thinner, more permeable than she remembered. A subtle, almost imperceptible shift in its light reflected the deep, muted colors of the fading sky beyond. The elders, their ancient eyes holding stories untold, remained still, a shared, silent vigil their only communion. Diana felt a cold thread of unease, a chill that had nothing to do with the island's gentle breezes, seep into her spirit. It was the chill of absence, of something vital slowly being extinguished far away, beyond their sacred shores. Themyscira itself, a bastion of eternal vibrancy, seemed to absorb this growing void, its usual radiant glow softened by an intangible sorrow that began to touch even the innermost sanctuaries. Turning from the silent elders, Diana walked slowly, her steps hushed on the worn marble path towards the Temple of the Oracles. The air grew cooler here, touched by the faint, earthy scent of ancient prophecies and hidden wisdom. Murals depicting Amazonian legends adorn the walls, their vibrant hues now softened by age and the pervasive stillness. The temple itself was a place of quiet contemplation, where the murmurs of the outside world, usually dismissed as distant echoes, were sometimes permitted to brush against Amazonian senses. Here, the great oracles would occasionally perceive glimpses of man's world, filtering their visions through protective veils, interpreting the fleeting shadows of humanity's distant struggles. Today, the temple felt heavier, thick with an unspoken weight. Inside the temple, the central chamber was shrouded in a perpetual twilight, lit by the gentle glow of ethereal, crystalline formations. A single oracle, her eyes closed in deep meditation, sat before a pool of shimmering, dark water. The water, usually reflecting faint starlight, now seemed to absorb all light, showing only indistinct, swirling shadows. From the oracle's lips, a barely audible whisper escaped, a sound like dry leaves rustling across vast, empty spaces. It spoke of cities growing quiet, of lights dimming one by one, not from violence, but from a gradual, chilling withdrawal of spirit. The whisper wasn't a warning of war, but a lament, a deep, pervasive sorrow from beyond the veil that now touched the very heart of Themyscira, a cold, persistent echo of a world slowly fading. Inside the temple of the oracles, the air thickened with the scent of petrichor and ancient parchment, a solemn weight pressing against Diana's senses. Luminescent moss traced delicate patterns along the polished obsidian walls, casting a soft, otherworldly glow that struggled to pierce the deepening shadows. At the temple's heart, a circular pool of mirrored water, usually pristine, now rippled with faint, almost imperceptible currents, disturbing the reflections of the constellations carved into the domed ceiling. 3 ancient oracles, shrouded in gossamer veils, sat in timeless meditation around the pool, their forms barely discernible, yet their presence pulsed with a profound, almost painful awareness. Diana approached the silent assembly, her heart echoing the temple's hushed reverence. Yet an undercurrent of disquiet grew within her. One of the oracles, whose posture had been utterly still for centuries, subtly shifted, a faint tremor running through her veiled form like a ripple across still water. The shimmering veil itself seemed to darken, absorbing the light around it, as if struggling against an unseen force. A low, mournful hum, barely audible, emanated from the oracle's direction, a sound not of peace, but of profound exertion, a desperate effort to contain or interpret the torrent of distant signals now assaulting their senses. It was a sound Diana had never heard before, a lament woven from the threads of countless untold stories. As the oracle's struggle deepened, the mirrored pool at the temple's center began to roil more visibly. Its surface no longer just rippled, but swirling with faint, dark eddies within these currents. Fleeting, indistinct shapes began to coalesce, like smoke against a darkened glass, spectral suggestions of crumbling structures, fractured lights, and an overwhelming, palpable sense of emptiness. These were not clear visions, but impressions, raw emotional echoes of a world far away, interpreted and distorted by the oracle's protective filters. Diana felt a cold tendril of that distant despair brush against her own spirit, a chilling premonition of what lay beyond the Themyscira's sacred, increasingly fragile barrier. The mournful hum deepened, a vibrational current that resonated not just through the polished obsidian floor, but through Diana's very bones. The shimmering veil of the central oracle pulsed with a faint, internal light, like a dying star struggling against an overwhelming void. Within the circular pool, the gentle ripples grew more agitated, swirling into indistinct patterns that defied the reflection of the constellation above. It was as if the water itself was struggling to contain the visions, to hold back a torrent of despair from another realm. Diana found herself leaning slightly forward, her senses straining, her warrior's instinct for action momentarily stilled by the profound, unsettling passivity of the oracle's ordeal. The air, once thick with petrichor, now carried a subtle metallic tang, like distant, cooling ash. Suddenly, the agitated patterns in the pool coalesced for a fleeting moment, not into clarity, but into a distorted mirror of shattered reality. Diana's eyes widened, her breath catching as fragmented images flickered across the water's surface. Towering structures, not of marble and grace like Themyscira's, but of dark, corroded metal reaching into a smog-choked sky. There were flashes of a perpetual twilight, not the soft gloom of a sacred grove, but an oppressive, artificial darkness. She saw vague, huddled forms, devoid of the vibrant life force she knew, moving like ghosts through ruins that whispered of forgotten greatness and present desolation. The mournful hum intensified into a desperate, almost silent scream within the oracle's veiled form, a soundless cry of a world in profound agony, echoing the chaos reflected in the disturbed waters. As abruptly as they appeared, the chaotic reflections in the pool dissolved, receding into the prior state of agitated, formless currents. The central oracle's veil, which had glowed with an internal struggle, now seemed to sag, heavier and darker than before. The mournful hum ceased, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than any sound, pregnant with the weight of unseen suffering. The three oracles remained still, but their collective aura was one of profound depletion, as if an immense, unseen burden had been momentarily lifted, only to be replaced by an enduring scar. Diana stood transfixed, the fleeting images branded onto her inner eye, a stark contrast to the serene perfection of her home. A deep-seated unease settled within her, a nascent understanding that the world beyond Themyscira was not merely struggling, but was slowly, irrevocably, consumed by a darkness that might soon threaten even their shielded shores. The call to intervention, once a distant, forbidden whisper, now resonated with a growing, undeniable urgency within her heart. The metallic tang intensified, a bitter echo of the crumbling structures Diana now saw with sharper, more agonizing clarity. The vague forms in the water shifted, becoming almost discernible, like half-remembered faces in a nightmare. The colossal towers, once just dark shapes, now revealed their decay. Rusted girders, broken windows like empty eyes, and a sickly, green-tinged smog that clung to everything. This was not the vibrant, verdant world of her home, nor even the wild, untamed beauty she imagined lay beyond. This was a place suffocated, where light itself seemed to have surrendered to an eternal, artificial twilight. A shiver, not of cold, but of profound unease, traced its way down her spine. The oracle's internal light, that faint, dying pulse, dimmed further, its struggle palpable, as if the sheer weight of the visions threatened to extinguish it entirely. Diana felt an inexplicable urge to reach out, her hand hovering just above the churning surface of the pool, a silent offering of solace to the suffering entity. As if responding to her empathy, the chaotic patterns in the water momentarily stilled, not into full peace, but into a brief, horrifying focus. From the swirling desolation, a singular image solidified, a lone, huddled figure, so thin and defeated that it seemed merely a shadow stretched against a crumbling wall. This figure wore garments that were less clothing and more tattered remnants, clinging to a form that spoke of deep, persistent hunger. There was no defiance in their posture, no hint of struggle, only a profound, exhausted resignation. Their face, gaunt and shadowed, held eyes that seemed to have forgotten the concept of light, reflecting only the perpetual twilight of their ruined world. Surrounding them were not grand battlements or bustling markets, but debris-strewn streets and the skeletal remains of what were once buildings, now hollow monuments to a forgotten past. This was not a warrior or a queen or even a rebel. This was simply a survivor, devoid of purpose beyond existence itself. A silent testament to a world Diana had never known, but now, disturbingly, felt. The single, desolate figure seemed to absorb all the muted light, a dark silhouette against the fractured concrete. It was not moving, merely existing, a profound stillness that spoke of utter surrender. Its head was bowed, shoulders slumped, a silent monument to despair. The air around it, even within the oracle's distant vision, carried the metallic, dust-choked scent of decay, heavy and suffocating. Diana felt a dull ache spread through her chest, a profound sorrow for this lost soul, a sorrow that felt deeply personal, despite the distance. The crumbling wall behind the figure was an intricate tapestry of rust stains and broken shards, reflecting a world truly broken. The oracle's light, already a fragile ember, flickered precariously, a last desperate pulse against the encroaching darkness. The mournful hum that had resonated within its veiled form now seemed to fray, weakening into a near inaudible whisper, a silent plea, as if in a final, agonizing effort. The churning surface of the pool, which had briefly focused on the lone figure, now pulled back, offering a wider, more expansive view of the blighted landscape. Towering structures, even more colossal than first imagined, stretched into the murky distance, their skeletal frames piercing a smog-choked sky that held no hint of sun or stars, only an oppressive, artificial twilight. A cold dread settled upon Diana, heavier than any armor she had ever worn. This was not a world in chaos, but a world in slow, agonizing surrender, a slow death. The air within the grove, though clean and pure, suddenly felt thin, as if the very breath of Themyscira struggled against the suffocating weight of the outside world's suffering. Her hand, still hovering above the water, trembled almost imperceptibly. The Amazonian oath, a sacred vow of non-interference, echoed in her mind, a stark counterpoint to the profound agony she had just witnessed. A silent, unyielding resolve began to set within her heart, a quiet determination to understand, even if action was forbidden. The pool's surface then grew still, the visions receding as gently as they had arrived, leaving only the soft glow of the grove. The oracle's vision, having pulled back, now settled on a panorama of vast, unsettling scale. The colossal structures, not merely tall but impossibly wide, formed an endless urban wasteland, their jagged forms silhouetted against a sky that seemed painted in shades of bruised purple and sickly green. This was not the vibrant chaos of a living city, but the monumental wreckage of a forgotten civilization. No wind stirred the dust-laden air, no birds cried out, no distant rumble of machinery reached Diana's ears through the mystical connection. The silence of such immense desolation was more profound than any noise, a heavy blanket that smothered all hope. Diana's gaze, though distant, felt the oppressive weight of it all, a suffocating realization of the world's deep decay. The very air within the vision shimmered with what felt like crystallized despair, clinging to every ruined surface. As the vision held, the oracle's subtle hum, once a vibrant thread, now seemed to fray further, weakening into a near inaudible whisper, a silent plea. Beneath the towering shadows, the ground was a fractured tapestry of broken concrete and rusted metal, scattered with heaps of indistinguishable debris that hinted at forgotten lives and lost industry. This was a place where nothing grew, where life had long since been choked out by the pervasive gray dust and the sheer weight of neglect. Diana's hand, still hovering above the churning pool, tightened imperceptibly, her fingers flexing as if to grasp at the fading light, or perhaps to offer comfort to the vast, silent suffering she perceived. Her brow furrowed, a quiet ache settling deep within her, a profound empathy for a world she had never known, yet felt intimately connected to through the oracle's sorrowful glimpse. The oracle's final whisper faded into nothingness, and with it, the dreadful panorama of the blighted world began to recede. The churning surface of the pool, which had briefly held such horrifying clarity, now diffused and softened, the sharp edges of the ruined cityscape blurring into formless mist. The bruised sky dissolved, the skeletal towers melted away, until only the gentle, undulating silver of the pool remained, reflecting nothing but the serene, ancient light of the oracle chamber. Diana slowly withdrew her hand. The sudden coolness of the chamber, ere a stark contrast to the oppressive heat and dust she had felt in the vision. The lingering scent of decay, though purely imagined, clung to her senses. She stood by the now placid pool, the echoes of a broken world resonating within her. A silent question forming in the quiet depths of her Amazonian soul. Diana's eyes, heavy with shared sorrow, followed the fractured lines of a once grand monument, now just a jagged silhouette against the dim, bruised sky. Amongst the twisted rebar and shattered plinths, a faded inscription, barely legible, spoke of forgotten ideals and a world that had striven for beauty before succumbing to a slow, creeping decay. The sheer magnitude of the loss resonated through the mystical connection, a silent lament echoing in the chamber. A faint tremor ran through the churning waters of the oracle's pool, causing the distant, broken imagery to ripple for a fleeting moment. The oracle's whispered hum, already so fragile, seemed to pull back even further, a delicate thread threatening to snap. Diana instinctively leaned closer, her posture a silent plea to the ancient power, her presence a steady anchor against the encroaching silence. The cool air of the chamber felt suddenly heavier, as if burdened by the immense, silent weight of the decaying future. For a brief, agonizing moment, the vision cleared just enough to reveal a single, solitary playground swing, rusted and broken, caught by a faint, sickly green light filtering through the perpetual gloom. It hung motionless, a stark, haunting reminder of laughter and play that had long since been silenced, swallowed by the monumental apathy of the world. The silence around it was absolute, a void where life once bloomed. Diana's heart, though resolute, felt a profound, gentle ache, a deep sorrow for what humanity had lost, a future stolen not by conflict, but by an insidious, gradual fading. The oracle's fragile hum, which had seemed on the verge of disappearing entirely, now pulsed with a faint, steady rhythm, as if Diana's silent plea had been heard and answered. The churning waters, responding to her steadfast presence, began to calm, the agitated ripples softening into slow, circular currents. The harsh, broken images of the decaying world blurred, then gently diffused, like smoke dissipating in the still air, leaving only the deep, reflective surface of the ancient pool once more. As the last vestiges of the sorrowful future dissolved, the chamber's inherent tranquility reasserted itself, a cool, silent embrace. Yet, for Diana, the quiet was now profound, filled with the echo of unseen suffering. The sacred space, usually a source of calm reflection, now held the indelible imprint of a world she had only just touched, a world that called to something deep within her, a primal urge to protect that resonated against the Amazonian tenets of non-interference. A long, measured breath escaped Diana's lips, a silent acknowledgement of the heavy weight that had settled upon her spirit. She slowly drew her hands back from the pool's edge, her fingers closing gently, as if to retain some fragment of the vision, or perhaps to steady herself. The cool air, once burdened, now felt merely still. Turning with a quiet grace, her gaze swept across the ancient carvings on the chamber walls, seeing them anew, as silent witnesses to a future she now carried, a secret burden within her Amazonian heart. The profound quiet of the oracle's chamber, once a soothing balm, now settled around Diana with a new, weighty presence. The echoes of the decaying future, though unseen, remained, an unsettling chill that permeated the tranquil air. She stayed motionless, her gaze fixed on the still, reflective surface of the pool, which mirrored only the faint, ethereal glow from the chamber's ancient stones. The perfect serenity of Themyscira, usually a source of unwavering peace, now felt almost fragile, a precious jewel held against a backdrop of encroaching shadow. A deep breath, slow and measured, barely disturbed the hush, yet it carried the tremor of an unspoken question within her heart. The Amazonian tenet of non-interference, once an inviolable truth, now pressed against the emerging strength of her own protective instinct. A quiet dissonance in the stillness. Slowly, with with a grace born of countless years of disciplined movement, Diana rose from her kneeling position. Her muscles, accustomed to combat and rigorous training, felt a subtle stiffness, not of fatigue, but of prolonged stillness in a moment of profound internal shift. The cool, smooth stone beneath her fingertips offered a grounding sensation as she pushed away from the pool's edge, each movement deliberate and soft. Turning from the tranquil waters, she allowed her gaze to sweep across the familiar, intricate carvings adorning the chamber walls, seeing them anew through the lens of the recent revelation. The symbols, once simply revered, now seemed to whisper of a world beyond Themyscira's serene isolation, hinting at the vastness and the vulnerability of life she had only just perceived. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor of resolve solidified deep within her. A quiet awakening, stepping out from the shadowed embrace of the oracle's sacred space, Diana emerged into one of Themyscira's winding, sun-dappled corridors. The air here was warmer, carrying the scent of exotic blossoms and the faint, distant sound of Amazonian laughter, a stark contrast to the chamber's cool silence. Sunlight, filtered through trellises heavy with vines, dappled the polished marble floors, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow. Yet, the vibrancy that usually uplifted her spirit now felt tinged with a delicate melancholy. Her gaze, no longer merely observing, seemed to search beyond the familiar beauty of the island, as if seeking an invisible thread connecting the Themyscira to the broken world she had glimpsed. The harmonious chorus of the Amazonian daily life, once so complete, now carried a subtle undertone of isolation, a silent question about the cost of their perfect peace. Her movement through the oracle's chamber was almost imperceptible, a ripple in the profound stillness that had been her sanctuary for so long. The cool, polished marble underfoot gave way to warmer, intricately carved wood as she approached the arched exit, leading into the outer corridors of the temple. Each step was a quiet declaration, a subtle shift from passive contemplation to active seeking. The air, once heavy with ancient wisdom and the scent of ozone from the pool, now softened, carrying the faint, sweet perfume of night-blooming jasmine that drifted in from the temple gardens. The muted light from the corridor sconces cast long, dancing shadows, transforming familiar reliefs of Amazonian heroes into watchful, silent guardians. Diana's hand brushed lightly against a smooth, age-old pillar, its cool surface a momentary anchor in the swirling currents of her thoughts, a physical connection to the enduring strength of her home, yet no longer a complete comfort against the world beyond. The corridor opened onto a moonlit courtyard where ancient olive trees, their branches gnarled and silvered by time, stood sentinel around a tranquil, reflecting pool. The night sky above the Themyscira was a canvas of deep indigo, speckled with stars that seemed to burn brighter here, far from the light-polluted world she had glimpsed. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, a soft, sighing whisper that wove through the peaceful air, carrying the distant murmur of the ocean. Diana paused at the edge of the courtyard, her gaze lifted to the heavens, then sweeping across the familiar, unblemished landscape of her home. The serenity was absolute, a perfect symphony of natural peace. Yet in her heart, she felt a faint echo of the chaotic world she had been shown, an awareness that the perfect harmony around her was an anomaly, a precious, fragile bubble against an encroaching storm. She felt the subtle tremor of the island beneath her bare feet, a deep, ancient heartbeat, and with it, a newfound sense of protectiveness, not just for Themyscira, but for the fragile balance of all life. With a soft exhale, Diana turned, her steps leading her to a secluded, rock-hewn alcove at the courtyard's edge, partially hidden by cascades of fragrant bougainvillea. This was a place she often sought for meditation, a natural sanctuary within the larger temple complex. The air here was cooler, imbued with the damp, mineral scent of ancient stone and earth. She settled onto a smooth, cool stone bench, the worn surface a testament to countless generations of Amazonian contemplation. Her fingers idly traced the intricate, almost faded carvings on the rock face beside her, depicting a simplified, stylized map of the world, a cartography of an older era, far removed from the complex, decaying future she had witnessed. As she sat, the gentle symphony of the island night enveloped her, the distant calls of nocturnal birds, the rhythmic hush of waves against the shore, the rustling of leaves in the breeze. The peace was profound, yet it no longer felt like an impenetrable shield, but rather a profound responsibility, a fragile beauty she was now acutely aware she might have to defend, not just from external threats, but from the consequences